What is it that's working in suburban, middle class, white areas that's, it's working well for them and it's making them safe? What do they have that these areas don't have?
What is it kind of like to live in London right now and be a young person?
It's all right, but you have to be careful how you go about your daily life, because you don't want to get involved in what's happening with the drugs and the knife crime, because if you do, it's kind of like a downward spiral from there, because you might lose your life or get close family members and friends injured because of what's going on.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you were saying. You just need to be careful, and you just need to have a strong mindset, and you just need to know where you want to go in life, because it's easy for you to get lost in this culture that's going around, what's happening around. And yeah, you just need to have be on a straight narrow path, to be honest, but then you also have to it's you acting well and having the right mindset, but then there's also that chance that where you can be just involved and involved in it from no fault of your own.
So what's going on at the moment? Why do the streets feel so intense and unsafe?
I think with the whole topic of gentrification and the belief that, privatising these areas and bringing private businesses and, social housing would make the areas prosper. But it doesn't seem to be having an effect, because growing up in Peckham in 2008, throughout to 2009 and 10, we had the same issue of rising youth violence, but now Peckham's a changing area, but we still have the issue. So I don't know if it needs to be work done from the bottom up with the actual communities and engaging with the young people living in those communities that are directly affected, or feeling the need to just throw in businesses there, privatise our housing, make life harder for the community. Maybe that's what's breeding the violence. It's quite hard to pinpoint exactly where it is, but it's safe to say, that the pillars of social inclusion are not really being tackled with the young people living in these areas, especially with Black minority ethnic young people. So focusing on targeting those pillars of social inclusion, focusing on education and crime deterrency and, health, both physical and mental, and, providing employment or job opportunities for the kids here.
Today the Home Office actually made a range of proposals, and this follows the Met saying that social media is kind of exacerbating issues, and making an announcement that they want to crack down not only on social media but also kind of criminal gangs selling drugs. I mean, do you think that these proposals will be effective and make these kind of areas much safer?
I think the reason why people mainly go to gangs is because they basically have nowhere else to turn to. There's barely anything youth clubs or places for kids to go to find a different path in life, if you know what I'm saying. Older brothers and the way and peer pressure could contribute to how kids end up in gangs and this lifestyle. I believe if there was more youth clubs or football training going on in these type of areas, less kids would end up on this roaming the streets at night and getting themselves into trouble like this, and be inside a warm environment where it's a very tight and they basically like a family outside of home.
Do you think that cracking down on social media would help the authorities to tackle rising violence? Because that's been one proposal that the Met have been very strong on.
We didn't have social media in 2007, 2008 and 2009. There was still stabbings and gang crime going on between certain areas. We still had those issues. So this whole conversation about censoring music and censoring social media, I don't believe it will be effective.
But within the past 10 years, crime did dip and then it had sparked back up. And so maybe we're seeing a different reason for violence now. And maybe social media is playing a role certainly in some of the newer conflicts.
Social media is perceived to be a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing. I think there are so many positive things about social media that just get swept under the carpet, and they focus so much on the fact that drill music is playing a massive part in the role of young people's lives in London. Maybe it's just a form of them telling their story. And I think that cracking down on social media or anything can make it worse, because you'll see a reaction from youths
I mean, drill
around
music
this area.
is a great point. I mean, Brixton's kind of well known for having some of the biggest drill artists in the country. I mean, having listened to some kind of drill music, do you think that it does normalise violence and that is playing out on the streets?
I don't think so. I think it's just a way of artists being able to tell their story of where they've grown up. And like, if they used another platform to explain their story, for example, if they wrote it in a book, everyone would see that it's a normal kind of thing, and it would just be like, kind of like, looked as fiction. But just because they are doing it in an estate, and because of the history of the estates or wherever the video shoot is taking place, that's the impact that where everyone's saying, oh no, it's this, that's violent, da, da, da. But really all they're doing is telling their experience and their stories, and that's the platform that they have decided to use. And for example, like when we were talking about social media and the negatives and the positives, there's so many positives. Like you can think about how many people that have made a living for themselves that could have taken another road because of social media, like the platform of YouTube or being Instagram famous. That's because they've used social media instead of going onto the streets and doing...
I mean, social media can definitely be used for good. But even drill music is not just some of these artists telling their stories. In some cases, they're calling out people and that's escalating into beef. And so surely there should be a move to crack down, or do you feel like that's not quite what would make you guys safer?
Well, like arguments is just like a natural part of like the chain of life, if you know what I'm saying. And there will always be fights, but it's the way how people go about the fights, if you know what I'm saying. Everything has a fight, even animals. Like, but why would you bring weapons when you could settle it in a different way, if you know what I'm saying?
I guess the question then is, what would make the streets safer for young people who live in areas just like this?
Go on,
I think understanding the root cause. I think there's so many sociological and psychological factors of what actually happens in the street. You've got the culture of bullying and grooming and like relative poverty, material poverty, social exclusion from schools. So I think it's just not one massive block to address. There's a lot of things that are playing together and intersecting. And I think having those conversations and it's having a conversation with the kids. What is it that's working in suburban, middle class, white areas that's, it's working well for them and it's making them safe? What is it that's working there that's not working here? What do they have that these areas don't have? What do those young people have that, the on the other side don't? So I think making those comparisons and, targeting that issue is a place to start, I guess.
Yeah, and I feel like it shouldn't be people like higher up or not living in the areas where like the crime is happening. I don't feel like they should be the ones to be making the decisions and pinpointing that it's social media that's being an impact in crime or it's drill music that's having an impact in crime. I think they should act like it should be coming from what the people in the local areas feel like is the impact, because if you're someone sitting in the high up in the government or something, you're not actually looking at what's happening in the estate and that you're seeing it from a higher level and you're putting your own twist onto what is happening in the area. And I feel like it should be coming from the people that live in the community for them to say what they think should happen.
Well, as somebody who does live in the community, what do you want to happen? Do you want more policing? Do you want more stop and search? What initiatives do you want in place that are going to make areas like this much safer?
Yeah, more opportunities and more places for young people to feel comfortable and more relatable people for young people to go and seek help from or to have an innocent conversation with and just feel like what they say is not confidential as much, but they can have that relationship where they're not going to be judged or it's not going up to someone in a uniform and feeling like they are higher up. I feel like everyone's equal and a young person or someone that's involved in this circle, they should be able to go and speak to someone and feel like they're on an equal playing field to that person.
And also normalising, making young people understand that mental health is a normal thing. I think a lot of young people shy away from the fact that they're depressed. A lot of young people do get depressed. That's why it's so easy to see a young person go out on the street and stab somebody, because they have they deal with a lot of mental health. They've seen a lot of stuff at a young age that people should never see, and normalising the fact that mental health is something that happens to even normal everyday people. Everybody suffers from mental health like physical health. Understand that they have someone to talk to, someone who's there for them, someone who relates to them, like Deborah said, is as important as anything else.
I mean, one group who does seem able to relate to young people at the moment seems to be gangs. And gangs are playing out all across the country. We're seeing kind of conflicts emerge. What can be done to tackle the rise of gangs? And do you think that the prevalence of gangs is as severe as the authorities are saying it is?
Gangs develop historically to provide a safe space for people that don't belong somewhere. It provides them an area to, like Deborah was saying, it provides them security, it provides them protection. And like I mentioned earlier, you'd be surprised at how much bullying goes on in the streets and how much trauma these kids have gone through. So to have a base where they're welcomed, or that provides them with a sense of security where you don't have to be a victim in the streets, we've got your back. All you have to do is this for us. I think that's ignored, and that's not really, that's not something we have a conversation.
I mean, I guess the sad irony of that is that if you do enter a gang, you might feel that you're more protected, but you're actually increasing the risk of harm.
Yeah, so I think that's why we need to have a conversation about, about providing safe spaces where they don't have to seek protection elsewhere, where they can come. And like Deborah said, you're not going to be judged. We can protect you. We can also have a conversation with you. There are other alternatives. There are other opportunities for you to get out of this lifestyle. Yeah. So I think, that's really important.
So you're 14 years old. Yeah. Do you feel safe?
Yeah, because like when I go to places where I know like people do live that type of lifestyle, they're not gonna trouble me if I don't trouble them. If you know what I'm saying. Like, when I go past, I just see them like sitting on the step outside the block, because like I play football in an estate, and I know people that like live that type of lifestyle, but I don't like talk to them like that. And all they do is they most of the time sit outside the block and play games and have conversations. But it's then when they go into a deeper level where they do sell their drugs and they do get involved with criminal activity where I don't see it, if you know what I'm saying. But the people that I do hang around that do that always tell me that it's not a good lifestyle to go about, and they only did it because they had basically nowhere else to go and they felt excluded from society.
And do you feel safe?
Yeah, I feel 100% safe. I think as much as anything, it's a choice. I was fortunate to have a very positive upbringing as a child growing up in South East London. I've always followed the correct path in the sense that I followed like the school route, but not everybody actually enjoys school. I didn't enjoy school. I didn't go into university. I found an alternative to university, but it's harder for a lot of young people who don't have that type of upbringing to bring themselves up saying, okay, I'm going to go try and make a way for myself. I'm not going to go to university. What am I going to do instead? It's so much easier to see somebody on the street who can offer you like an easy £10, or you're going to go work for it at Sainsbury's, like a £7.20 an hour job, for example. So it's a choice as much as anything, I think.
It's interesting that both you are young men. You're a teenager, you're in your early 20s. And we've seen a lot of young men who aren't active in gang life, who aren't particularly involved in crime, and they found themselves victims by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, simply because of maybe where they live and their proximity to some of the rising violence. Does that ever play on your mind?
Well, not really, because like I know that I travel a lot and I get to know people in the area, yeah, and I don't go to an area looking for trouble, and there's always like I always know when something's about to like happen because I'm always aware of my surroundings, and if I do feel unsafe at the moment in time, I do go somewhere to seek safety, even if it's in a shop.
Do you think that young people now need to be adapting their own behaviour in response to the rise in violence?
I feel like they just need to be more aware of their surroundings. So like sometimes when you're just on the street, there's like when you're amongst friends, you're amongst your friends and your mindset's quite small, like you're just with your friends. So I feel like young people just need to be a bit more aware of where they are, when they're out and stuff like that. That's with anyone, not just young people, like even adults. Everyone just needs to be more aware of where they are like when looking around them. But that's just with everything. I think that's with everyone.
But when you bear in mind just how deadly the streets have been in recent weeks for young men who are predominantly black and minority ethnic, do you not feel that they would benefit from stop and search removing some of those knives off the streets, even if those searches are being done on people who match their profiles?
Well, like, when you think about the wide area and how many people carry knives, even though stop and search might eradicate a few out of 1,000, it's not really helping, because you're making people that aren't involved in the crime feel wary because they are being searched when they haven't done anything wrong. And recently I was outside the chicken shop and my friends were on the other side of the road, and the police did stop and come out and search my friends and myself, but we didn't have anything on us. And for the rest of the day we felt wary because we thought we had done something wrong for them to come out of the van to search us, and we hadn't done anything wrong.
And as a young woman, as a young teenager, for you now, what do you make of the kind of increased police presence? Do you think increased police presence will be beneficial?
I don't know. I think it depends on how the police go about it and how their aura is around the young people that they suspect to be involved in this gang crime and stuff. So I feel like it just depends on how they present themselves, and if they're going there on like, oh, I'm in a uniform, so I'm higher than you. If they go with that idea, then no, I don't think it would be a positive impact on the rise in gang crime.
Like, you've all spoken about the importance of investment long term, but in the short term, what short-term things can be put in place so that the streets are safe?
Look at this now, 10 years down the line, we're still back, around to square one, where the problem's still happening. So I know it's hard to say, we need to get thinking quickly. We need to save as many lives right now. We're in a crisis. We need an idea now and then that we can implement. But we've got to think to the future. What happens when, the 17, 18-year-olds that are involved now grow up and they have kids on their own, and then they're faced with the same cycle? We've got to break the cycle now.